Walk like a man, even though you walk alone. Why court approval once the road is known? Let come who will, but if they all turn home, the goal still awaits you. Go on alone.
Follow your dream, though it lead to worlds unknown. Life's but a shadow, once our dreams have flown. What if men cry, your dream is not our own? Your soul knows the answer. Go on alone.
Give life your heart, bless everything that's grown. Fear not the loving, all this world's your own. Make rich the soul, but once the seed is sown, seek freedom, don't linger. Go on alone. Walk like a man, even though you walk alone. Why court approval once the road is known? Let come who will, but if they all turn home, the goal still awaits you. Go on alone. Go on alone. Go on alone.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to Sunday service at Ananda Village here in the Yogananda Amphitheater with lovely Lotus Lake in the background. We here who are attending in person have masks on and we are doing everything silently, but you at home can do everything out loud if you like. I'd like to, so I am Nayaswami Parvati. This is Nayaswami Pranaba, and we're very happy to be here with you today. I'll be reading from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita, written by Swami Kriyananda. The truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Does God hide the truth? In last week's reading, we saw that the great masters themselves counseled discretion in the dissemination of truth. The counter-argument is sometimes made, but the Lord doesn't hide. He reveals His beauty in the sunsets, His tender sympathy in the rain, His wrath in the thunder, His restless energy in the brooks, His power in the sunlight. There are exoteric truths, and there are also esoteric truths. There is that which is revealed impersonally and left up to us to interpret, such as the thunder and our perception of it as divine wrath, the rain and our perception of it as God's sympathy. But behind even God's most open expressions, there lies impenetrable mystery. The wind blows where it wills, said Jesus in chapter 3 of the Gospel of St. John. You hear the sound of it, but you do not know where it comes from or where it is going. So is everyone who is born of the Spirit. And Sri Krishna says in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. By me, the whole vast universe of things is spread abroad. By me, the unmanifest. In me are all existences contained, not I in them. God's hidden reality cannot be understood by the reasoning faculty. India's Sankhya philosophy states frankly, Ishwar Ashiddha, God is not provable. A willingness to seek the underlying reality behind appearances is essential for those who would know God. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
This reading is taken from Paramahansa Yogananda Book of Prayer Demands, Whispers from Eternity. Many doors opened before me at the dawn of thy coming. O Lord, the very earth shone with life when thou camest. The very ground on which I stood thrilled me because of thee. Everywhere dumb matter spoke to me, spirit resurrected by thy touch. All living things swayed in the incense breeze of thy approach, hinting at thy perfume of bliss. Thy sanctuary of omnipresence was long hidden by the darkness of my indifference. Now, on the revealed courtyard of thy temple, I find thy fountain of joy gaily bubbling. With uplifted palm cups of craving, I catch and drink from the vital waters of thy solace. Lord, I know now that I shall thirst nevermore. I was reading a collection of funny stories the other day, and I came across this one where a man who was very safety conscious went with his friends on a vacation. This is prior to coronavirus. And they landed at a lake to explore water activities, and his friends convinced him to participate in parasailing for the first time. And he was on the boat, nervous, and as they were hooking him up to the parachute, he nervously asked the pilot of the boat, "How often do you replace the rope?" And smilingly, the pilot said, "Whenever it breaks." It reflects well on the situation that we deal with this pandemic, that you can feel as kind of a baseline in the world that there is anxiety, there is the uncertainty of what will come. Will it be over with magically in a short period of time that we're dealing with this pandemic? Seems unlikely. But already we see, maybe not so much in our lives, but certainly in our lives too, but in the world, there is that challenge of distress, anxiety, tensions, and as we've heard the word many times now, the fatigue of dealing with the pandemic. But I was thinking, well, how do we, as truth seekers, how do we as devotees really find our way in this time? And there are many options, but I'm just going to emphasize something that I think is very valuable at this time, and that's going to the simplicity of life. Going to being simple around things. Now, simplicity, being simple, does not mean it's passive. Passivity isn't part of simplicity. In effect, it's the opposite. We want to be dynamic in our simplicity, because the goal isn't to be simple. The goal is to be with God more. Simplicity is simply a tool that we can grow with. But I was thinking of this applied to meditation, because that's something that we're dealing with. And I've heard from numerous people that meditation has been difficult. It hasn't been smooth sailing. And perhaps it hasn't happened for some people. But even if you've been doing well with meditation, I hope you can gain a little bit from what I'm going to emphasize here. That when you think about meditation, and you can get wrapped up in either being too automatic in doing it one more time, or you can feel that, am I getting somewhere with my meditation? Is it really fulfilling? Am I really feeling the qualities that we know are an inherent part of our soul nature through meditation? These again become layers upon layers, sometimes more subtle, sometimes more overt. But I think for all of us, we've probably faced those layers at different times to lesser or greater degrees. But I was thinking about this, that just the simple act of coming into our seated posture for meditation, if we can just come to the simple focus that we're relaxed in our posture and yet dynamic. So not, in a sense, just letting go in that posture to relax, but feeling the stability of that and then feeling the upliftment in the body posture. So the body starts to work with us in a simple way of already being in that consciousness of expansion, as the affirmation topic for this morning of self-expansion. By simply doing that, by having the chest more open so the heart can start to feel that openness of devotion, that we can feel the breathing becoming more natural, more who we really are. It seems so simple, but really, it's the simple things. If we can just focus on them and bring them to a greater awareness, then they work. They really are guaranteed to work. And then prayer. Prayer is an interesting one because in group prayers, there's sort of a protocol that we use, and that's fine. But I was reading just the other day something Swami Ananda had written, and he was talking about his own personal prayers. I don't know when this was, maybe a decade ago or so that he wrote this. But he was saying, he was revealing that more and more his personal prayers, certainly for meditation and other times, were much more simple. And he said often it's just, Lord, I am thine, be thou mine. And he said that would be the prayer. Because he felt that his soul was already opening to the experience, again in that simple awareness. Now there are times when it's going to be more of a conversation with the divine that our prayer will be like, and that's appropriate. I think what's needed for all of us is to be real in the moment, to bring the simple awareness of what's happening in this moment. When I sit, when I pray, how do I feel that I'm with God? That God may be being very, very good at hide and seek with us. And that may be for a lot of reasons. As it talks about in the reading, the subtleties of the wind blowing. Where does it come from? Where does it go? That's not something the mind can reason out. But there may be reasons, I said, where we're not in the experience of the divine in a deep way. That's really up to God and the masters. We don't know what our karma is. We don't know what grace is in terms of if it's experiencing an experience we already have, or it's something we're not simply conscious of, but we have an intuitive sense it is happening. We can't necessarily know that. So our part is really, how do we bring the purity of opening up to the possibilities and offering that to the divine? What comes of that? That's up to God and the masters, as I said. But as we then go into the approach of meditation with Hong Sa, for instance, just going into diaphragmatic breathing, It is remarkable how it can just soften the seemingly constant impact of the world's tensions and our own tensions. It just allows us to be rather than doing. And it engages us in the experience of more receptivity, of that openness. In a sense, what we're doing in our openness, we're inviting the divine to come to us. And then the divine is inviting us to be open to that experience. And so as we do that diaphragmatic breathing, we start to separate from the pulls and pushes of the ego, of desires, of attachments, of the stresses of life. And then we can just feel. Then we can let go of tension. The inhale, tensing the body, exhale, relaxing, becomes not just something to do to get done, but becomes the experience, again, of inviting and receiving the blessing. It isn't just to do the physical part. It does tremendously well in dealing with that. But it's really an engagement that we're tuning into. And then just even measured breathing. I think for me personally, it's a hidden jewel in our gifts that we've been given with meditation. Because especially after years of meditation, we tend to let it be an insignificant part of our practice, at least for a lot of people. But I found when I'm having more challenges, more difficulties, that God seems to be very adept at hiding at this point, then I'll do not just a few repetitions of even measured breathing, but a dozen or more. And I try to be in the center of that experience rather than the doer of those experiences. I try to be there with the breath. Relax, using the diaphragm from that previous diaphragmatic breathing focus, of bringing that to an engagement, of really living that experience, feeling God, separating the veil in that experience of that deeper measured breathing. And the 12 repetitions, all I can say is, it's rare that when I've done that many times of even measured breathing, that I don't feel the touch of God. It feels I'm so still, I'm so interiorized. There is that experience. Maybe not deep at times, but there is the experience. The divine is there, willing to be there with me. And then watching the breath, being mindful of the breath. This mindfulness at first, of course, is taken from the perspective that we're watching the breath, we're repeating the sounds of Hong Sa with the breath. But that isn't really what's important here. That's like getting engaged. But really for all of us that have even been meditating just a few months, if not many years, that what we can do is shift from being center everywhere, circumference nowhere, that we are the breath that's flowing through us. We are the vibration of the sounds of Hong Sa. We are experiencing the divine in that experience. We are that experience. There really isn't even us to be the one experiencing these things. We just are completely in that experience without reservation. And when we do that, that's when Hong Sa becomes what it's intended for. Not the practice of meditation, but the experience of meditation, the absorption experience, when there's no separation, when we feel that expansion of consciousness, the expansion of awareness, when we feel that it's not just us expanding towards God, we're expanding in God. And that's real. It's not just something we can look forward to. That can happen if we're just bringing that simplicity to focus, that awareness to being real in the moment. So as I've often express that there is no preparation for something else. The breathing exercises aren't a preparation for meditation. They may well indeed prepare us better, but it's a waste if we're thinking that way. If we can shift to whatever I'm doing is the experience of God for me in this moment, then we have that richness already. We have that self-expansion. We're not going towards it. Now, there may be some real obstacles to refining that, but that doesn't really need to concern us. We can still refine our offering and refine our receptivity to that experience. Because even if it's just a kernel, a little prick point of light that we can feel in our experience, or even it's just dark. I mean, remember Master saying in one of his meditations, in metaphysical meditations, behind the darkness of closed eyes. Well, there are times that's all there is the darkness. There is no experience other than that. But I was thinking about this, that light itself isn't absent in darkness. It's simply not revealed. Because darkness itself cannot be perceived without light. Seems like an odd thing, but read up on your physics and you'll find out that's true. But so even the experience of what we would call darkness is still part of the experience of being deep within. And enjoy it for that, rather than feeling, but I don't see the spiritual eye, I don't have visions. That doesn't matter. Bring it to that simplicity of what is the offering and what is the opening in that experience. There's a wonderful saying from the Indian scriptures, and I'm not quite sure entirely where it's from. I think it might be from the Upanishads. But a very simple phrase. It says, all sound leads to silence. All movement leads to stillness. It's such a simple focal point for us that whatever there is in creation, whether it's vibration through sound or movement, its point of origin is in that oneness beyond movement, beyond vibration, beyond sound, or whatever it might be in creation. And I thought that's a nice way to approach this simple way of meditating, is that whatever is happening, I'm returning to that deeper experience of who I am. And not so much that I'm going from point A to point B or point Z, it's just that I'm moving. I'm moving in my offering. And so what the experience is as a result is less important. What's really the emphasis for us is am I moving my energy towards that oneness rather than duality and separation. Because God really isn't hiding from us if we're coming to that simple awareness of the truth within our own selves. I mean, this is interesting of the title of today's reading, Does God Hide the Truth? Well, in Sanskrit, one of the most common names to describe God is Sat. Sat also means truth. So it's kind of it answers itself. God can't really hide the truth because God is truth. What we're just doing is being involved in the play, the Leela, the dance that God has set into motion. And we know, certainly during these times of the pandemic, that it can be confusing. We, again, as I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, there can be the evidence of distress, of tensions, of upheaval, of unsettledness in our lives. But that may just be the reality. That doesn't have to mean that it's our reality. It just expresses what's happening in the world of express reality. So we shouldn't be saying that that's not real, but it's a lesser reality. And it's one that we have to respect as happening, because the dream still can be a nightmare. And so we respect that, we appreciate that, but we don't have to say, then my reality is distressful, unsettling, it's tense. We can just feel tension moves through us, like when we inhale and tense, exhale and relax. We're not identifying that we're the tension. That's simply the result. What we're identifying with is the energy dynamically coming to a focus, and then dynamically focusing on that energy, relaxing, coming into oneness. But it's not the tension that we're focusing on. It's the wave of energy that produces the tension. So life itself is guaranteed to produce the tension. And it will appear that God is hiding because of that. If we can nurture that connection through the simple approaches in meditation, in life, then it needn't be so. God will be there. Maybe the feeling in our hearts, maybe the calmness in our awareness, maybe the expansion in our consciousness, maybe the peace of our souls. But it is there. Let's embrace it.
When sown the soundless roar doth come, when drowsed with matter's dreary drum, on shores of bliss on blooming breaks, all earth, all heaven, all body shakes. The bumblebee now hums along, baby own doth softly sing his song. From Krishna's flute the call is sweet, 'tis time the watery God to meet. Cords bound to flesh are broken all, vibrations burst and meteors fall. The hustling heart, the boasting breath, no more shall cause the yogi's death. The God of fire with fervor sings, Om, Om, his joyous harp now rings. Prana, God with power sounds, the wondrous bells the soul resounds. All nature lies in darkness soft, the star divine is seen aloft. Subconscious dreams have gone to bed, 'tis then that one doth hear Om's tread. Oh, upward climb the living tree, hark to the cosmic symphony. From home, the soundless roar from home, the call for light or dark to roam. From home, the music of the spheres, from home, the mist of nature's tears. All things of earth and heaven declare, Om, Om, resounding everywhere. From Om, the music of the spheres, from Om, the mist of nature's tears.